So sadly guys, the Battlefield 6 beta has finally come to an end. We now have 3 days of downtime before the second week of the beta spins up again on the Thursday, leading all the way through to the Sunday. There's going to be some new content there. But in today's video, whilst I've had a blast of a time in the beta, I did want to highlight some things that I feel are nevertheless holding Battlefield 6 back that I would personally really like to see improved. I would also love for you guys to, of course, share your thoughts below. Let me know what you would like to see improved going into the full release of Battlefield 6. As always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be plenty more to come on Battlefield 6 going into the future here. And as always, thank you guys so much for the ongoing support. So first of all, let's just touch quickly on what is actually coming next weekend in the beta, the second beta weekend. So first off, we have everything from the week 1, so all of your progress in week 1 is going to continue over. If you're level 20, I assume you're going to still be level 20 if you've gotten, you know, some of the rewards for the engineer and the assault class, but you didn't finish recon or support, that progress will stay the same, so you can complete those things. So we're going to see the same game modes there and the same 3 maps. But then they're going to add in a new infantry-only map called Empire State. Now, some of you may have seen this from the creator reveal event. I am personally very excited to play this. Infantry only is a first for me in Battlefield 6. This is the only of the 4 maps, I suppose you could say, that I haven't played through labs testing, so that's going to be an experience. Then we've got closed weapon breakthrough, so as we had a closed weapon playlist for Conquest, next week we're going to have closed breakthrough, or I should say this week. Then we've got 2 new game modes coming, Rush and Squad Deathmatch. And then 3 new challenges as well, complete with cosmetic rewards. And I know that these ones are going to be more game mode oriented, so it's going to be like cap flags in Conquest, capture, you know, flanks on Breakthrough, disarm MCOMs in Rush, you know, that sort of thing. Now, Weekend 2 is going to use the same build as Weekend 1, so I wouldn't expect to see any fixes like a fixed shotgun, for example. Don't uninstall the beta client, you're going to use the exact same client, just keep it on your systems and wait for Thursday. And now let's get into some of the things I think need to be looked at in Battlefield 6, some of the things I think could be improved. And as a bit of a disclaimer, just let me put this out there, because I know there's going to be people in the comments who say, but Ghost, it's just a beta. And yeah, I understand it's just a beta, but I say, what better time to be giving feedback and allowing DICE and EA to improve on the game. That is why it's called a beta test, so they can iterate on it and improve it. I know there's 2 months to go until the release of the game. I'm really hopeful that they are going to improve a lot of stuff, and that's precisely the reason why I want to pull up this list. It's kind of ridiculous that I even have to say that, but there are just always people in the comments who say this sort of stuff, so there you go. Alright, so first off, server browser. We need a server browser, and I know there is a server browser coming to the game in some form or another through Portal, but how this is going to work isn't really crystal clear yet, and it feels a little bit like DICE are somewhat holding off on telling us how it's going to work, and that worries me. So, you know, the reasons why we need a server browser, I think, are obvious. It helps build communities, it helps you play on the maps you want to play on the game modes you want to play, it helps us circumvent the matchmaking problem we've had since Battlefield 2042, where you get the same map again and again, and you have to constantly quit out of the matchmaker and then rematchmake until you get an experience that you're happy with. Now, on that subject, I just want to highlight a couple of things that the lead producer David Serland has been saying over on X, because Philippe here says, I'm not sure if this is you, but there really needs to be some way to matchmake with +4 groups on official servers. Completely agree there. And David says, I mean, this is what we've been harping on about. The Portal browser is basically enabling that, plus map playlists and in a persistent way too. It's not the I stumbled upon a cool server in my city server browser, but for organized play, it sure hits the mark. And some additional replies have come out of this, and David's kind of elaborated, and he says it's a server browser, it contains servers, some are custom experiences, some are verified, which is what most are looking for on this topic, which means basically like official DICE experiences, essentially, even though they're not created by DICE. The combination of the pool of the persistent servers and the spun up ones is not very useful. Matchmaking servers spin up in seconds, get filled with players, and spin down after a game is over. That couple of seconds plus when servers lose a lot of players mid-game is the only time you can join, which makes it a tricky combination and full of queuing to join issues. We think the current setup gives us the best of both worlds, as you can choose to go spin up a server through regular matchmaking, or find an existing server that is already running, or create your own as well. We'll soon be testing the server browser so you can experience it. And then we have this guy coming in here and saying exactly what I'm thinking. Wouldn't it be better to have a server browser exactly like Battlefield 4, 1 and 5, etc., where you can find both custom and official servers? There's just so much more freedom with that. Never been an issue in previous games. And to that, David says the inherent problem with that model is you have server browsers running forever with no games going on. It's very ineffective in utilizing the actual hardware on a whole game perspective. A hybrid solution, Battlefield 1 had this sort of, but on the persistent side, is to be preferred. So it sort of sounds like they almost want to save money there, like having servers with nobody playing on them with official DICE experiences just isn't very efficient. Yardi then comes in and he says the majority of Battlefield players that are playing the beta want servers for the base game, not just exclusively in Portal. Servers are now communities that are built. And David then wraps this up by saying, I don't think this is clear enough. The server browser is under the Portal umbrella, yes, but it is the same game and it is going to be accessible from the main menu. It's not Portal as you know it. Look forward to the first test of it on labs. So it really does sound like this server browser is going to be a bit in the middle. It's going to be better than the server browser we got in Portal in Battlefield 2042. Like he said, it's going to be front and center and allow you to make whatever experience you want, official or verified as they call it, or non-verified, with full XP, but it's also not going to be tied into the matchmaking system, it sounds like. So I do wonder, how many people are going to use this server browser over just, going into matchmaking, hitting that, because I think a lot of new players are also going to be coming over to Battlefield 6 this time around, and they're probably coming from games where there aren't server browsers and you do just hit matchmake, and that's probably exactly what they're going to do in Battlefield 6. Now, I think the reason they're holding off on expanding on this and making some sort of a public statement with maybe a blog post going over it could be because, just like he said, they're planning to test this in labs. So between the betas now and this coming weekend and the release of the game on the 10th of October, you can probably expect that there will be some labs testing, and once that testing has taken place and hopefully they've iterated on the server browser a little bit, we'll finally get a blog post from DICE going over everything. I just hope that it's good. Now, the next big thing for me is the vehicles. The vehicles I feel in the game are somewhat hit and miss. It feels like they've received the least amount of love in the testing time, and that was certainly my experience of being in labs. I would say the helicopters are in the worst position. I think the flight model really just needs an overhaul. It needs to be looked at and tested upon by people who know what they're doing in helicopters. I think the weapons and the damage seem mostly okay, except the range on the rocket pods for the driver seem a little bit out of whack there. Like, they were disappearing before they'd even hit the ground for me, so maybe the range needs extending on those. But just in general, they feel far too weighty. You can't pull off a lot of the maneuvers that you can in Battlefield 4's helis. I think the flight model is sort of going in the right direction. They're trying to capture what they had in BF4 there, but it really just needs a lot of work, and for that reason, helis are top of the list for me. Second place are the jets. Now, I am going to make a separate video really focusing on the jets because I just have so much to say about them, but I'll keep it short and sweet in this one. Basically, the jet cannons are kind of all over the place. They do way too much damage to helicopters and jets, way too little damage to armor on the ground, and after all, this is supposed to be an attack jet. It's sort of supposed to be built, in my opinion, around the primary weapon. Countermeasures are over way too fast and probably recharge then a little bit too fast. Heat seekers do far too much damage. The out of bounds areas on the maps, like the maps themselves, are just too small, not just for the jets, but for all the vehicles. We definitely need a proper rear view camera that allows you to move whilst you're looking in that camera for dogfighting purposes, even though the 360-degree camera is very nice and appreciated. And the flight model in and of itself, again, just like with the attack helicopters, it feels too heavy, especially given the small bounds and the low flight ceiling that we have on the one map that we could test. Now, I think that the tanks and the IFVs are actually in the best position. There are still some gripes I have with them. I feel like their turret turning speed is just a little bit too low. They are glass cannons, they do a lot of damage, and I think that's really, really fun, but this also means that an engineer can come up behind you, and if they get a perfect square shot on the rear of the tank, that will actually do 50 damage, 50% of the health of the tank there. So if you don't have a gunner, who of course has a turret that can swivel around on a dime to protect you, then you're going to die. Now, I think partially they've done this because they really want vehicles in BF6 to lean into that team play, that squad play, where you have a gunner and he's jumping out and he's repairing for you and he's got his head on a swivel and he's taking out people, you know, trying to see for you. But playing solo in a tank or an IFE is a pretty miserable experience. And again, I think it really comes down to map design. We haven't seen all of the maps, but the two main ones that we're playing on there, you know, the Iberian Offensive and the Siege of Cairo, are extremely cramped, and it feels like a lot of the time you die and there was really just absolutely nothing that you could do about it. This is a problem we saw in Battlefield 2042, where the turn speed of the tank's turrets was too slow, and I would say originally it was even faster than it is in Battlefield 6 now, but nevertheless we saw DICE actually tune them up a little bit and increase that turn speed to encourage the tanks to be slightly more aggressive and get on the flags. And that's the same problem we're seeing on Battlefield 6 right now, is that the tanks are hiding on their side of the maps, somewhere down an alleyway, taking pot shots at the enemy, trying to sort of clear out the flag. And I, for one, don't really feel confident in being aggressive in them, because you'll just get surrounded by engineers in a split second and taken out. So I do think, yeah, on the turrets there, they do need a little bit of a tune-up. There's also some weird bugs going on. Using the zoom in these vehicles, and this goes for all the vehicles, I think it's broken, it's got to be bugged. There is a major delay when you zoom in with the cannon, and then there's a major delay before you can zoom out again, and sometimes I'll be in third person, and then all of a sudden, I haven't pressed a button, but I'll find that I'm in the zoom camera. I'm like, what is going on? Sometimes my vehicle just stops moving. I can't move forwards, I can't move backwards, and I thought, well, maybe my tracks have been disabled, but then I've got full HP and there's nothing on screen telling me that it's been disabled. So is that a bug? Maybe, I don't know, but I think it's definitely something DICE need to look into there. Something else I think they ideally need as well is a test range for the vehicles, just like we had in Battlefield 4. Don't get me wrong, I love the test range that they have for the infantry, but they really need one for vehicles, because what we're seeing is the only place people have for practicing in the jets and practicing in the helicopters. And again, let me remind you, there's a lot of people coming over from other games who have no idea how to fly vehicles in Battlefield. We really need a place for those people to figure that out, that's not in a real game where they are going to waste those vehicles. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, it can just be, like, if they want to reuse the Capstone map, or the Domination Peak map, I should say, that's absolutely fine with me. You know, an empty server with nobody in there, just so they can take off in a jet, take off in a helicopter, and fly around and just dick around for a while, right? I think that's all we need. Sounds pretty simple, so hopefully they will add that in. The next thing for me is the UI, and somebody posted this comparison here over on Twitter of Battlefield 4's UI compared to Battlefield 6's, and you can tell just on the color scheme, you know, it looks very similar, but I think things are placed in a much better position in Battlefield 4. All of the information is still on screen, but it's a little bit more concise, tucked away in the corners, and it really allows for you to have a much more immersive experience. I actually recently tried turning off the HUD entirely in this game, and there's going to be a video coming on that for you guys soon, by the way, because it was amazing. But the game played completely differently with the HUD off. I feel like it is a little bit big, a little bit blocky. Some of the fonts are maybe too big, like the resolution on them just looks, you know, not that crisp. Again, you know, I am nitpicking here, guys, but that is the point of the video, right? We want them to improve as many things as possible. I also think when it comes to the iconography, a lot of things don't look that intuitive to me. Like, it's not obvious on first glance what they are. The defibs here in this shot, for example, a lot of people said they thought this was like a claymore. I had no clue that this was the defibs before I actually read it. And that really brings me on to the class icons. The class icons in this game have kind of been reinvented. They are rather abstract. I don't have a problem with the assault icon, but the other three kind of confuse me. So the difference between the recon icon and the engineer icon is not huge. The engineer icon is supposed to be a nut, as in a nut that fits on a bolt, and that is supposed to signify engineer, but I would much prefer to see a wrench there, a blowtorch. Those are the things that I think of when I play engineer in Battlefield. Again, here for the support class, we have a plus sign signifying healing, but there's a missing like line going through the middle of it, and it just looks weird to me. The crosshair here for the recon, I think this is the second most readable one after the assault class. but it's still, I don't know, just kind of bothers me because it's got these rounded edges. It seems like somebody's gone to the effort of trying to redesign these for the purpose of reinventing the wheel when it simply did not need to be done at all. These icons that were cooked up by somebody over on Reddit are far more readable to me here. I said this in labs testing, nobody really seemed to care and said, you know, I was sort of nitpicking about this, but I think it's something that does matter. I think icons in a game should be instantaneously readable and you should know what you're clicking on. And the same thing goes for vehicle icons as well. I feel like in this game, they're okay, but they're not quite as readable as they were in Battlefield 4. I feel like it's a little bit more of the Battlefield 2042 syndrome, where I couldn't really tell like a massive difference between, let's say, the tank icon and then the IFV icon. Same thing goes for the menus, where the options in the game are located, again, isn't very intuitive. I find that there are options in more places than one. Sometimes there are options that are even obsolete. I was covering this in my jet guide vehicle. There is vehicle sensitivity in 2 different spaces. They both have the exact same description, but they don't share the same slider. I've got one set at 20%, the other set at 30%. Which one is the real vehicle sensitivity? I couldn't tell you guys. I think they really just need to go through the entire options menu. It also really irks me that whenever I press escape on the keyboard, instead of backing out to the menu before, it goes all the way back to the start of the menu, and now I'm on like accessibility instead of graphics where I was before. And I kind of find the same thing with the gunsmith menu, you know, going in and out of weapons, having to click on the class, click into the weapon, click the weapon category, click the weapon I want, click on customize, then click modify. It's like 10 clicks or something just to get into a weapon in order to be able to modify it. Now, I think a lot of this is probably because I'm playing on PC. It seems to have been designed for console players, and the same can be said about the matchmaking system, right, where you just sort of go up or down, left or right, find the game mode you want and press X. That's how it's been designed, but for mouse and keyboard users, it has to be said, it's a pretty terrible experience. It's not a game breaker for me, right, but it is something that over time is going to start to grate on you a little bit. Now, I think the audio in Battlefield 6 is absolutely fantastic, especially if you put it on the war tapes with the very aggressive listening mode. Really, really nice. But one thing I would like to see improved here are the footsteps. The footsteps are so quiet that the only times I ever heard footsteps from the enemy in the game, they were already on top of me, and I was already dead before I could spin around and react to them. Battlefield 2042, whilst it doesn't do a lot right, I would say it actually does footstep audio incredibly well. I can hear people in that game coming from literally corridors away, at least with my headphones, so I think that needs to be tweaked a bit. Again, it's not the loudness of the footsteps. I think the loudness of them is fine. It's the range, right? The range of them. It's only kicking in, as I say, when people are right on top of you, and so that doesn't really help you in any way. Next up, we have matchmaking. Ah, good old matchmaking. The one we all know and love, right guys? Yeah, of course, it's just like in Battlefield 2042. It matches you into the same map, and if you're playing on Breakthrough, you'll often find that not only are you on the same map, but you're also on the same side again and again, and it basically wastes a lot of playtime of you having to back out of the matchmaker and requeue until you get the experience that you want. Now, bit of a disclaimer here, we do only have 3 maps, so of course the probability that you're going to end up on the same map is exacerbated in this sort of a testing scenario, and we don't yet have the Portal server browser. Maybe it's going to be way cooler than we all think it is, and this is going to solve all our problems. But nevertheless, I still think if we're going to have a matchmaking system, like David Serlin was mentioning earlier, that's going to spin up a server and then spin one down again, let me remind you as well, in order, presumably, to save EA costs, because it's more efficient, so this is really doing them a favour, they need to make it so that there is some sort of information stored in your account of which map you've just played, so you don't get match made into the same one again. Just that small fix would really go a long way. Or maybe they could just make it some sort of a hybrid system where you say, I want to play this map, and this map, and the matchmaking system will only find you a game in those 3 maps. So it's not quite a server browser, but it's going to solve one of the big problems around not having a server browser. Okay, let's talk about gunplay and the weapons now. Overall, I had a lot of fun with the gunplay. I think it's in a decent spot, but the recoil really needs to be looked at. Now, again, bit of a caveat here, DICE already said that there has been a recoil pass. It hasn't made it into the beta build, and that probably means it's not going to be in the beta build this weekend either. So I'm assuming they have probably increased the recoil for a lot of the weapons, because right now, especially if you kit them out with the correct attachments, they are like laser beams across the map that you really don't have much recoil or cause for having to burst the weapons. And then there's the shotgun. The shotgun definitely needs to tune down. I know they've already confirmed that it's going to be looked into. Right now, you can put slugs on this thing with like a 4x sight and snipe people in the head across the map, but also one-shot them in the body close up with hip fire. So that seems a little bit broken to me there. I know the buckshot, you know, the shotgun basically with no attachments on it is already completely broken. We've seen a lot of people using this, and they have said they've looked into that, so that is going to be fixed. And then we have weapon sway. Now, weapon sway is something that is designed to kick in when you jump in Battlefield, or you jump out of a window, right, you land on the ground. This weapon sway is supposed to kick in, and it's supposed to be a penalty, so you can't just jump out a window and instantly beam somebody down. You're going to have this penalty there. But what is happening in the game at the moment is whenever you walk over so much as a pebble, any uneven ground, and there is a lot of uneven ground in this game because there is destruction going off everywhere, facades on sides of buildings are falling down, cars are exploding, there are tank wreckages everywhere, right? You're constantly having to walk over stuff as an infantry player, and it is triggering that weapon sway animation. And your aim is tied to that sway, guys. It's not tied to the center of your screen like in some previous games. It is tied to where your optic is when you're ADSing. Now, luckily, Florian has come in here and he said it's bugged and we're fixing it. The wobble is supposed to play from much higher fall heights than that, but any small drops right now will trigger it, which is super frustrating. So there you go, that one is actually being fixed. Just thought I'd mention it here in the video. And finally, this brings us to the maps. Now, I know a lot of people, judging from Reddit, have problems with the maps. It seems that the maps that they've given us to test out here aren't to a lot of people's liking, which really surprises me, because the one thing I remember people asking for is urban environments without all of the vehicles on there. You know, people were like, oh, Battlefield 2042, it has all the vehicles on every single map. Why can't we have some more Battlefield 4-like maps where, you know, they're slightly smaller, but you've only got like a few vehicles, like Flood Zone, for example, or Grand Bazaar from BF3, or Sen Crossing. And I feel like that's exactly what they've given us, but still people are complaining about it. Now, I do think they need to maybe look at the pacing of the maps. I do agree with people that there isn't a lot of downtime. It's constantly sort of, you know, die, respawn, like there's people surrounding you, especially on Abazid. It is just so crazy on that map to me. And as I was mentioning before, I think the way that vehicles tie into these maps, the ground armor on Siege of Cairo and the Iberian Offensive, they don't really have a lot of space to maneuver. They're very, very slow. They're basically the same speed as like a soldier sprinting in the game, which is not very fast. They can't swivel their turrets fast enough here for the size of the maps. And again, when it comes to Domination Peak, it feels like the airspace is not big enough for either the jets or the helicopters, really. Other than that, though, guys, I would say let's just wait and get our hands on the other maps. There is the biggest map in the game that we still have to see, called Mirak Valley. We've also yet to see Operation Firestorm. That's going to be another large map. So my understanding here is that DICE have gone for a smattering of different map sizes. The ones they've showed us are around the medium size, maybe small to medium, I would say. We haven't really seen any of the biggest maps in the game yet. So let's wait until the game actually releases and we've got everything in our hands. You know, next weekend or this coming weekend, the new map we're going to get there is probably going to be even smaller than the 3 we've already experienced, because it is going to be infantry only. But after we've seen, you know, all 9 of the maps, if we still feel like it's a problem and even the biggest map isn't big enough, then sure, then let's sort of go and complain about it. But I'm sort of putting a pin in that one for now. I don't really have a problem with the maps. I thought they were all very fun and enjoyable. There are small niggles that need to be fixed, like people are managing to get up on the central mountain in Domination Peak by sort of mountain goating their way up there, you know, just constantly jumping and getting over a little bit of space at a time. That's sort of broken the map. That needs to be fixed. Breakthrough. All the sectors on Breakthrough on a lot of maps need to be fixed, like the Siege on Cairo one needs to be looked into. The first sector on Domination Peak definitely needs to be looked into. That left-hand side needs to be opened up right from the start, so you don't get funneled around the right side of that rock, and then like the enemy are literally stood on the rocks in front of you, and they can just snipe into your spawn. That is so broken right now. But those sort of problems are somewhat expected to me from a Battlefield game, and I'm sure we're going to see DICE come in and make some meaningful changes there. Right, this video is getting way too long, so I'm going to leave it there, guys. Those are my top issues with the game. Just want to reiterate again, though, I have had a whale of a time. I've not had this much fun playing a Battlefield game in probably over 10 years for me right now. So I'm so stoked to play more this weekend. I'm going to be streaming it again. I don't know if there's going to be any new drops, but if you guys want to come by the stream, maybe hop in some games with me, either on the Twitch side or the YouTube side, I'll be streaming in both places, then feel free to join me. Don't forget to let me know your biggest issues with the games below. If there's any that I didn't cover here in the video, drop those there as well. Thank you so much for watching today. Subscribe to stay up to date with everything Battlefield 6, and I'll see you all in the next one.